So for the past 7 months, David and I have had our granddaughter living with us, and I am her primary caregiver, and I am being challenged and confronted every day. Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome to the Covered Podcast. I am your host, Mya-Karren, and on this show, we discuss women and how we are showing up in the world. So I have been meaning to make this episode. This is going to be a solo episode, but I have been meaning to make this episode, and my struggle is not because I have not been able to articulate what it is that I want to say, but it's more so that a lot of the examples that I give to make my points are personal anecdotes. And if you have been a part of this community for a while, then you know that I keep business and family very separate. My channel is about hair and fashion, and now this podcast. However, at the same time, with my experience and with my personal anecdotes, I think that it will drive my points even better to what it is that I am trying to say. So I have noticed a lot of things within these 7 to 8 months that she has been with us. And when I say that I'm being confronted and challenged every day, I mean that. And it's coming from everywhere. It's not just one situation. It's not just one environment. So what I want to do in this episode is just talk about things that I am noticing when it comes to our teenage girls and our young girls. It is very different hanging out with a child and raising a child, or a child being with you 24/7. You begin to realize and you begin to pick up on things, right? I was aware that these things were going on, but I was not aware of how prevalent they are. So before I get into these examples and before we have this conversation, my main point of today's video or today's episode is, as women, as mothers, as aunties, as caregivers, as grandmas, we need to be very careful about the things that we do, what we say, how we dress, how we approach situations, how we talk to people in front of our teenage daughters, nieces, and our young girls. Okay. So the very first thing that I want to talk about is I feel as though that there is a concerted effort for our teenagers and even our young girls to show more and more skin. We were doing back to school shopping, and we hit all the places: Old Navy, Gap, H&M, Zara, Children's Place. We had a wonderful time. We walk into TJ Maxx and we're still in the kids department. We're in the girls section and we're in the athleisure aisle, right? Even though it's back to school, it's still very much hot outside. We're still going to be going to Aiden's games, and on the weekends, we try to get out and do physical activity. I pick up a skirt. This is in the girls department, and it is completely see-through. Now, for the past couple of seasons, sheer clothing has been very in. I know what is very popular right now, since we are getting ready to go into the cooler months, is the maxi skirts that are sheer, and then the woman will put on a blazer to cover her bottom. The skirt is completely sheer, and it wasn't even biker shorts. It wasn't even boy shorts. It was full on triangle underwear. And if you ask me, it looked pretty cheeky. Now, the first two things that I thought to myself were, what TJ Maxx buyer thought that this was appropriate for a 9-year-old? And what company, designer, or warehouse thought that this was appropriate to make for a 9-year-old? I'm very aware of Teacher Bay, but Teacher Bay is what you get when you don't address this at the young girl stage or the teenage stage. Because I remember when back to school started, there were a whole bunch of people going viral talking about their first day fit for high school, and it looked like they were getting ready to go to the club. When Aiden was in high school, we were at one of his football games. I'm terrible with ages, so I will give the mother anywhere between the ages of 35 to 40. She had on leggings. Her butt was not covered. Her daughter, I will give her between the ages of 7 and 10. She had on a leopard catsuit. I'm not talking about a leotard for gymnastics or for ballet. I'm talking about a full-on leopard catsuit. And then she had on Uggs with like a cropped jacket. Once again, where did you buy that from? And why do you think that that is appropriate for your 9-year-old? Let's talk about the perception in TV. Y'all know the movie Coming to America. It is a classic. Everyone loves that movie, okay? We are all familiar with Prince Hakeem or Akeem. He is standing in front of his congregation and his soon-to-be queen is being presented to him by the general, by her father. Her village comes out, they do a dance, and then they present her. She's looking gorgeous with her hair. She's looking gorgeous with her makeup. And she does have on a dress. It is fitted. And then it comes like all the way down. And it was still done in a very tasteful way. That movie came out in 1988. We're talking about a woman who is getting ready to be a queen. She is going to be the ruler of Zamunda. She is going to be representing her people and her country. Now, let's fast forward to Coming to America 2. I believe that came out in 2022 or 2023. Stark contrast. Now, let me say this. I am aware that movies are made for the time that they are in, but it just goes to show the progression of what we think a queen, a princess, or someone in a high level of authority is in. And this is no shade to Tiana Taylor. Give me the workout routine, because as the kids say, her body was T in the movie. But what I'm saying is that she's the one that comes out and she's doing the rapping. She's the one that's doing the gyrating. And also she doesn't have on a lot of clothing. This is a young woman who is being presented as a future or as a prospect to be queen. We found out in Coming to America too that Eddie, I keep wanting to call this man Eddie, that Prince Akeem has an illegitimate son and he is looking for a mate for him. This is a prospect for queen, the ruler of Zamunda. Look at Princess Imani and then look at Tiana Taylor's character. Very different. We recently went to one of Aiden's college football games. He's now a freshman in college. And the cheerleaders come out. It was October, so this is breast cancer awareness. Everybody has on pink. They have on pink outfits. Not one of the cheerleaders' outfits or their skirts fit. They were too short and too tight, to the point that each one of them had on biker shorts underneath. Now, outside of funds, right? Because maybe they didn't have the funds to get new breast cancer awareness outfits. When the coach saw that not one of these skirts fits, there should have been an executive decision and say, hey, listen, I know that we wanted to support Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but my girls' bottoms are literally out. Let's put on uniforms that actually fit. When I am talking about caregivers, when I'm talking about mothers, I'm talking about the decisions that we are making. It seems small, but this tends to have a snowball effect. If you don't say something or if you don't address it, then that means that you either condone, you don't care, or that behavior or that dress is acceptable to you. You don't say anything, and then you look up and your preteen or your teenage daughter is leaving the house with no clothes on. And you say to yourself when she comes downstairs, well, why are you wearing that? So what I'm saying might seem minute. It might seem small. It might seem insignificant. But when you allow your 5-year-old to wear a crop top, when you allow your 10-year-old to wear pum-pum shorts, when you allow your preteen to wear a mini skirt that is too short, you are condoning the behavior. As a caregiver, you are the first impression of what a young girl thinks a woman should be. She is going to emulate you in so many ways. Having a child with me, I fully understand now the phrase, children are sponges. They remember everything and they soak up everything, okay? I am asking us to just be cautious about what we are wearing, how we are presenting ourselves, and how we are allowing our teenage daughters, preteens, and young girls to leave the house. All right, let's talk about screen time, tablets, phones, games, and apps. Once again, dealing with a child in this day and age, raising them with technology or allowing them to have a tablet or allowing them to have allowing them to have screen time. Please, 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 please. I know when you are trying to clean up. I know that when you are trying to prepare dinner. I know that when you are doing laundry. I know that when you just want some alone time, you put your child in front of the TV or you put them in front of a tablet. Please, 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 please be aware of what your children are watching, what they are doing, and what type of games they are playing. We were sitting in the movie room. I was folding laundry and she was sitting right next to me. She was playing a game for children, but we all know that when you play games in between levels or just after a certain amount of time of playing that game, ads begin to run. The game was for children, but the ad was not. So I'm sitting there minding my business, my ear to what the person is saying. An ad comes on in the middle of her game, and it's a woman voice, and she's building a body to get ready for a date. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep folding. And then I hear the voice say, so he can see how much of a freak I am. I clutch my pearls, of course, but then I look to the side, and she has on like this fishnets. It was almost like this BDSM body that she built. Now, I understand that businesses are in business to make money. However, when you are creating a game for a child to play, to me, it would seem as though that you would be aware of what type of apps or what type of ads you are allowing on this platform. There is another game, and I am not going to pretend to understand what 9-year-olds find funny, but there was another game where you got points for throwing trash at people. Fine. You think that's hilarious? Fine. And when she sent me the approval so that she could download the video, I noticed that the individuals that she was throwing trash at, I would probably say there were 6 rounds. And I would say 3 of them, so every other, was an individual who looked like a man, but was wearing makeup, had nails, and was wearing a dress. I said, okay, let's find something else to download. Now, had she have just sent me the approval for that video or for that game, and I didn't even look at it and I approved it, she would be sitting there playing that game, throwing trash at the people. And then the next thing I know, she'd be coming to me asking me why someone with a beard is wearing a dress. When, in my opinion, that is not an appropriate conversation for a child. Not at that time, not at that age. So I know it's hard, but please, 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 at least pre-watch. Because I feel like at this point, I feel like anything that she watches or any game that she plays, I feel like at this point, I have to pre-watch or pre-play what it is that she is wanting to play or watch. All I am saying is please just be diligent and be aware of what your children are playing and what they are watching, which is going to bring me to my next point. Social media, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, all the medias, and even YouTube. What I now know is that YouTube Kids is not for kids, okay? But I more specifically want to talk about Netflix. There are a lot of shows on Netflix that give me pause and they concern me. The very first one is Alexa and Katie, or Katie and Alexa. I like the idea of the show. Basically, it's 2 best friends. They're in high school. One of them has cancer, the other one shaves her head, and then they just go through all the trials and tribulations of being teenagers. On the surface, the show is very cute. Once again, we were in the movie room and we were watching one of the episodes, and the little girl who had cancer, the young lady who had cancer, was having a sleepover. And they were talking about boys, of course. But all of a sudden, they pull out a Ouija board. Now, I would probably say at this point, had been watching this show. I'd probably say anywhere from 15 to 20 episodes in, right? So we're already aware of the family dynamic. We're already aware of what the main characters like and what they don't like, who they have a crush on. And then she just pulls out this Ouija board and is asking, the Ouija board, does Alexa or does Katie like the boy from school? And the way that they just kind of slid that in there, it was sneaky. But for me personally, it was also just so random. Out of all of the episodes that we had watched, there was no other mention of witchcraft. There was no mention of the paranormal. There was no mention of ghosts, goons, or goblins, or even vampires. So I was like, okay, let's switch to the next episode. But it's that little sneaky tidbit that was slid in there that I had not been sitting there, that she would have either continued to watch, just be confused, or knowing her, she would have asked me, what's a Ouija board, right? So then, of course, we go to a commercial and it's talking about a new show, Vampirina. It's a young lady, I believe she's either going to boarding school or going to college or what have you, and she's a vampire. And she's trying to hide the fact that she's a vampire, right? But her roommate finds out, and then they're on a mission to hide her being a vampire from the rest of the school or the rest of the boarding school, wherever they are. I feel like there is an effort when it comes to ghosts, goons, and goblins, and witches, and the paranormal, and voodoo, and witchcraft. I feel like there is an effort to, I'm not going to say dumb it down, but bring it to a level to where children can understand it and make these, I'm not going to say, well, I guess you could say evil, but these not so nice creatures or spirits or beings, trying to make them cute and adorable, and trying to introduce ideas into kids' minds or into their psyche to make it seem like that it's okay, right? And we know, especially when it comes to algorithms, especially with Netflix and with any other platform, once you click on something and then the algorithm picks up that you have been watching it, you could come back the next day, or you could even refresh your screen, and then it's going to have this recommended for you page, and it's just going to be similar content. So of course, the next day we get back on her Netflix account, and in the recommended page or recommended banner, it's nothing but witches, nothing but witches, nothing but witches, nothing but witches. So, I have steered away from that. There was another show. It was called The Worst Witch. I believe it is based out of England. Most of them had English accents. And while the show was cute, it was basically following this young lady. It's called The Worst Witch. So she was just bad in the beginning at being a witch. Kind of like, I guess you could say, Harry Potter for kids. But what stopped me in my tracks is when we were downstairs doing dishes and she was talking about she was going to cast a spell on someone. I explained to her why that is not appropriate or why that is not nice. And that was the last time or the last day that we watched that. There's a whole bunch of inappropriate things on Netflix. There are a whole bunch of inappropriate things on YouTube, whether it's regular YouTube or YouTube for kids. We were on YouTube Kids and she was watching this one channel called 123 Go. And in this particular episode, there was a wedding, but the guy was in a wedding dress and the girl was in a tuxedo. Okay. Once again, if I had not been sitting there, would she question it? Would she tilt her head? Would she ask? Or would she just think that's funny and move on? After so many times of someone seeing that, especially a child, it becomes normal and they don't think anything of it. So if that is something that you do not believe in, if that is a lifestyle, or if that is something that you do not want to talk to your young children about at this point in time, all I am saying is please, 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 please be very cognizant of what it is that your children are watching. I will also say that London is not on Instagram. She is not on TikTok. She does not have a phone, and everything that is on her tablet needs to be approved. As a matter of fact, she is also not on Roblox. And this was before, I believe his name is Schlepp, went viral. The reason she was not on Roblox when she got here is because when you are on a tablet and when you are downloading games, what I have seen is 4+ and then 12+. So whenever she finds a game that she likes and it says 4+, I will get a notification and I can approve or deny it. If you are not aware, Roblox is actually 12+. So the way I have her tablet set up, she's 9. The way that I have her tablet set up, 12+ is completely grayed out. She can't even request for me to approve it. We were watching a gymnast show. She is into gymnastics. We were watching a gymnast show. I believe it was filmed and based in Canada. And there was a main character. And then when she moved there, she had 2 best friends. Now, these girls are in middle school. So one of the main character's best friends, she's into crystals, auras, reading people's minds, premonitions, and all of that. So while I appreciated the content because it was gymnastics and, she has discovered Simone Biles and all of that, and she just moved up a level in gymnastics and they're getting ready to have a show in December. While that's wonderful, I don't like what the friend is into. Once again, these are not conversations for 8 and 9-year-olds. So you're going to have to make the decision. Do you allow her to continue watching the show and then every time it comes up, you say something? Or do you, as a family or as her caregiver, find something else for her to watch? The next thing that I want to talk about is behavior. And because people post everything online, it seems like attitudes, talking back, twerking, cussing is okay for teenagers, preteens, and even young children. I did a video talking about Miss Shirley. I will link that video down below. I do not agree whatsoever. But she is not the only one. She is just the current one. But videotaping your 5-year-old cussing someone out and posting it is not cute. Videotaping your 8-year-old twerking and then posting it for the world to see is not cute. As I said in the beginning of this video, the things that we are exposing our young girls to and the things that they are allowed to do matter. I remember, or I won't say I remember, but my mother was talking to me about a situation that happened when I was going to a private school in Fairfax, Virginia. I believe I went there from like kindergarten to 3rd grade. I was on the cheerleading team. I was so excited. My mother was sitting at practice and we were dancing. We were making a dance routine up for the next basketball game. Now, mind you, in the 3rd grade, 2nd grade, you're 6, 7, 8. And there was this move that we were going to do where essentially you put your hands up, you kind of sit down, and then you start popping your bottom. My mother very quickly stood up and said that my child is not doing that. She said the looks that she got from the coach and other mothers was like, how dare you? And I think they were looking at it more from a stance of it's cute because they're 8. It's cute because they're 6. And my mother said she's not doing that. If you guys are going to keep that move in this performance, she will not be performing at the basketball game. Now, of course, I'm just upset because I can't perform. But I can say today that I appreciate my mother for standing up for me. But to me, it's odd that the coach and other mothers were looking at my mother as if she were weird because she did not want her 6, 7, 8-year-old essentially twerking. I mean, there wasn't a word for it back then when I was little, but essentially twerking for the world to see. And it's an inappropriate dance move for a child. When I have conversations today, when I talk to people today, When I hear the things that people are allowing their children to do, and when someone asks me my opinion and I say, well, I wouldn't let my child do that, they look at me as if I'm weird. They look at it as if I'm the problem. When in actuality, your 7-year-old listening to Ice Spice or Megan Thee Stallion is not appropriate. But when I say something, okay, well, what about Gracie's Corner? What about, I don't know, Kids Bop? My child is 10. Why is she listening to that? She's 11. Why can't she listen to Beyonce? Why can't she listen to Cardi B? Because Cardi B is talking about giving a man fellatio in a bathroom, okay? Why does your 11-year-old need to hear that? So it's just interesting that when my mother told me that story, the pushback that she got when she told them that her 6, 7, 8-year-old is not doing that. And I have said this before, the way that we communicate with one another, the way that we speak to one another is just so unfortunate. I think we need to focus on collaboration versus competition. I am not saying that it is going to cut out the aggressiveness. I am not saying that it is going to cut out the violence. But what I am saying is that we need to figure out how to talk to one another. We need to figure out how to communicate with one another. I don't know what it is about today in society where we want to take back the power of certain words. The female dog word. I do not hang out with women who refer to one another as a female dog. That is probably one of the worst or the most derogatory term that you can use for a woman. It has always had a negative connotation, and it will continue to have a negative connotation. The cussing, the attitude, the yelling. Please just be mindful of how you are speaking, how you are reacting, and how you are communicating with other women when your daughter is around, or niece, or cousin. The last thing that I want to talk about is aggressiveness. And this is more or so, well, no, it can even be for young girls, but I am noticing this more in preteens and in teenage girls. When Aiden was in high school, I used to pick him up, and he used to tell me stories about how the girls at his school would show interest or show him that they liked him or that they wanted to talk to him, date him, court, what have you. And he was telling me about one situation where he was sitting in class and they had finished their classwork. So the teacher said, hey, we have about 10 minutes free time. So he and his friends decided to just start having conversations. Knowing him, it was probably about football. I believe they were all on the football team, or they were in close proximity to the football team. They were football adjacent. And there was a girl sitting behind them. And all of a sudden she just yells out, "Don't be effing talking about me." And they kind of pause and they turn around and they look. And they're all confused because not only was she not a part of the conversation, but they were not talking about females. So they just kind of turn around and they're like, huh? What are you talking about? And she was like, y'all were effing talking about me. Don't be doing that. And again, they're still very confused because they were having a conversation probably about boy stuff or football. And I'm saying that because the way that she was trying to get his attention was very aggressive, right? In her tone, in her manner, and she was even cussing. I remember when I was in middle school, when I was in high school, you might put on extra perfume that day. You might put on a little lipstick. You might wear a slightly shorter skirt, right? You might do something to bring attention to yourself in a very ladylike way, but it wasn't to run up to the boy that you like and start cussing him out. That was not how in middle school and high school my friends and I got the attention of the guys that we liked. There seems to be another concerted effort for our young girls to just be very manly and to be very aggressive. And you see it when they're on social media. You see it when they talk to one another. There are so many girls who keep talking about on social media they're going to beat someone's ASS. The way that they talk to teachers, the way that they talk to their parents, the way that they talk to one another. It's just so aggressive. And I'm trying to figure out where it's coming from. Because when he's telling me these stories, I just don't remember it being like that. Using your feminine wiles to attract a man. Right? If you guys remember the movie Memoirs of a Geisha, when the older geisha was ushering in the new geisha, she was telling her, you should be able to get a man's attention by just the look, not having to say anything. But when he's telling me these stories, it just seems that our young girls are getting more and more aggressive, and it's actually having a counter effect. They're not getting the response that they are looking for. And I will give you an example. Kristen Stewart, she was on the cover of Rolling Stones, which I believe it was a mullet, but she had on like a jacket, but she also had on what it appeared to be was a jockstrap. And then her hand was in her private area. And then you open up the magazine and she's giving this interview and she's sipping on a beer. She has on tattered clothes, you know, her legs are open and she's acting like a man. And although I will say Kristen Stewart has been, in my opinion, alternative, it was never this manly and it was never this blatant. Let me know if y'all saw that. I know that this is going to ruffle some feathers, but this conversation or this episode has been weighing on me heavily because it seems that it is getting worse and worse and worse. I'm not going to say that we are at the point of no return because people like myself are speaking out, but I am a small voice in a very heavily funded machine. It's no accident that someone like Ice Spice or someone like Glorilla or someone like Megan Thee Stallion is being pushed as opposed to a Jill Scott or an India Aubrey. Because when I was initially thinking about doing this podcast, people were saying to me that Ice Spice, Lotto, Glorilla, Cardi B, Sexy Red, that they're plants. And while that might be true, as the consumer, we don't have to consume the content. We don't have to pedestalize and we don't have to support the people, the women that are put before us. Okay. So I am not naive to think that there are not huge forces and billions of dollars behind these artists and behind these ideas. But if we want our young girls to grow up feeling loved, feeling supported, we have to begin to watch what we do. I tried to say these things as graceful as possible because these conversations need to happen. Oftentimes, I think when these conversations happen, emotions are heightened, people get in their feelings. But I think that there is a way to have these conversations without being direct, but without being disrespectful. There is no need to call someone a whore to let them know that maybe what they're wearing is inappropriate or they're showing too much skin. The way that you speak to someone matters. Because once you offend someone, they stop listening and now they are ready to respond. Okay. So I think that we can have these conversations with grace and class and understanding. What I love about this community is that we are able to disagree, but we do so respectfully. Please leave your comment down below. Let's start a conversation. Let me hear your thoughts and I will see y'all next time. Bye.